So what do we know about asthma, and why is it important to understand metabolic health and inflammation in order to understand why somebody would experience something like asthma? So basically what happens with asthma is somebody is going to be exposed to some kind of thing in the environment. Like, for example, it could be a chemical. It could actually be something that is quite disastrous to our health, or it could just be something benign, like, for example, pollen that doesn't usually affect somebody. And what happens is the body will recognize that as being something that is going to be harmful to us. So essentially what it's going to do is it's actually going to do a very smart process where it will tighten up the bronchioles within our lungs. This makes sense because the body's like, we don't want this. We don't want this in our body. The less you can breathe, then the less you're obviously going to bring in that disastrous thing, whatever it is, a chemical, whatever. But as I said, sometimes this can occur with things that are actually not harmful to our body, things that are benign, like pollen, for example. So what's really interesting about asthma is we need to kind of understand the pathogenesis of what actually is going on, because then we can understand why it actually is very highly related to metabolic health issues and inflammation. So essentially, as I said, what's happening is the smooth tissue within our bronchioles is going to constrict. But in order for that to happen, we need to take a very special molecule from our cell membranes in order to make this happen. So membranes of our cells are made up of a phospholipid bilayer. Of these phospholipids is a molecule called arachidonic acid. So essentially, we're going to pull from our cell membrane this arachidonic acid molecule. And from there, we can end up using that to make certain products. We can make, from arachidonic acid, we can make prostaglandins, thromboxanes, and leukotrienes. So when we're talking about asthma, leukotrienes are the one that is quite important. And these are actually pro-inflammatory molecules. So as I said, they're going to stimulate the vasoconstriction of these bronchioles within our lungs, and this is going to stop us from being able to breathe. Of course, this is going to come out in an inability to take in enough breath and to release enough breath, and it's very, very uncomfortable and quite frightening. So what we need to understand is, in order to convert this arachidonic acid to these pro-inflammatory molecules that are going to cause effects around the body, we require an inflammatory stimulus. Now, there's a couple of things going on with asthma that's interesting. Not only do we need this inflammatory stimulus, so for example, if there is a lot of inflammation going on in the body, you're going to have the stimulus to convert arachidonic acid to its pro-inflammatory particles. On top of this as well, they've also found that having a higher ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is also going to trigger this process. The reason for this is when we're converting arachidonic acid to whatever products we're trying to make, each of them have a specific function. Most of them are going to be pro-inflammatory. And so it makes sense that if you have an inflammatory stimulus, something is going wrong and the body needs to make more inflammatory chemicals to sort out the situation. It makes sense that then we're going to drive through the pro-inflammatory response. What's really interesting is that arachidonic acid can also be converted to anti-inflammatory products. So what they found, as I said, is that if you have more omega-6 within you're consuming too much omega-6 as opposed to omega-3, you're going to drive through the pro-inflammatory cascade of arachidonic acid breakdown more so than the omega-3 anti-inflammatory cascade. So the importance is obviously to try to make sure that you are consuming enough omega-3. Now, omega-3 isn't just from fish, like it is commonly known. We actually get a really beautiful bolus of omega-3 from grass-fed ruminant meat. So that's worthwhile understanding as well. But just because you have, omega-6 in your diet doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get converted to pro-inflammatory chemicals. And that's because, as I said, you also require that inflammatory stimulus. I think that's worthwhile understanding too. But one last factor that's important to understand about asthma is that people also require this inappropriate immunosurveillance. So essentially their immune system is hyperreactive, and you could call this a low immunotolerance. This basically means that things that are in the environment that really shouldn't be reacted to, the body will react to them. Now, there's certainly a genetic component to this, but like anything when it comes to genes, it doesn't always, just because you have the gene there, it doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily be switched on. We know that there are certain things like hormones, chemicals, whatever it is, that are going to stimulate cells to start turning those genes on, or essentially using those genes to make proteins and enzymes and things like that. So what's important to understand here is that there are 3 known mechanisms that are going to be behind asthma. A lot of it is environmental. So if you have, something that is in your environment that could be dangerous to your health, your body is going to react by closing off those airways. If you have a lot of inflammation, you're going to be stimulating the conversion of the arachidonic acid to more pro-inflammatory, chemicals that are going to stimulate more inflammation. And if you have a low immunotolerance, you're also going to have more of a chance of stimulating this effect more. It's also worthwhile understanding too that certain things are going to make your immunotolerance dysregulated, so lower your immunotolerance, and they are things like leaky gut. This makes complete sense because, of course, if you are getting particles that should stay within your gastrointestinal system leaking through the cells of the gastrointestinal system and reaching our bloodstream, it obviously makes complete sense that the immune system is going to go, hang on a minute, this is fine, we shouldn't have this here. And this can be a big stimulator of an inappropriate immune response. So for example, if you're experiencing something like leaky gut, it's important to get on top of that so that you can help heal things like asthma, because essentially allergic reactions like asthma, hay fever, all of this sort of thing are similar in its process to things like autoimmunity. So anyway, I hope this makes sense. If you want any more information on this, please let me know. But I hope it makes sense now why, if you are consuming a species-appropriate diet, you lower your inflammation, you are consuming enough omega-3, why this can help to eradicate things like asthma and other allergic reactions. I also want to give you a little bit of hope here, and I think this is very exciting, that I actually personally had asthma all my life until about 3 years ago, to the point where I was on a lot of medication for it. I never was hospitalized, but it was certainly something that absolutely controlled my life. I haven't seen any signs of asthma for 3 whole years. So I think that's incredible. I don't take any medication anymore, so there is hope. And it just goes to show that with the right diet and lifestyle, you can get rid of things that you might never have thought that you could get rid of.